In-depth journalism in the Memphis community, the Daily Memphian is of Memphis, not just in Memphis, and seeks to tell the stories of this city. TheDailyMemphian.com. Truth in place.
The ruling on the field stands.
We deliver jerseys, funny foam fingers, and everything you need for the game. But what you really get is so much more.
FedEx Delivery.
Game day spirit. What we deliver by delivering.
Welcome back to another edition of the Daily Memphian Memphis Tigers podcast. This is your host, Memphis basketball beat writer Drew Hill, and I am here with my very pouty coworker.
I'm never pouty.
Jonah Jordan, the Memphis Tigers football beat writer. What a week it has been. You have no reason to be pouting.
I'm not pouting
because the Memphis Tigers football team had their day in the sun over the weekend. College game day, huge win over SMU. And then the basketball team followed that up a few days later. James Wiseman makes his debut. He looks awesome. And all things are good in Tigerland, yet Jonah is pouting.
I'm not pouting. We had a great weekend. It was fantastic. I had a blast at game day and then covered a great game. Quick 22-hour day, nothing wrong with that. I think what time we get out of the Liberty Bowl? It was a long time.
It was late, and then I drived you home.
You are a journalist, and you just said drive.
I was gonna say I had to drive, and then I tried to go a different direction, and then I ended up with drived.
Natalie's laughing.
I mean,
at you.
I guess technically, I guess I drove you home.
There you go.
And I didn't get home until about 2 a.m. And even after I got home, I was still super pumped up and not the slightest bit tired because that atmosphere was totally electric.
I stood at my fridge. I was like, because I didn't eat all day. I don't think you did either.
No, I ate the rendezvous in the press box.
I didn't eat that. I just stood there at my fridge just looking at it. And then I was like, no, I'm too tired to eat. And I went to bed. But we'll stop complaining. What was the highlight of the day?
I am not complaining.
You're a
I'm
complainer.
in a fantastic mood.
I'm in a great mood too. Okay, highlight of the day on Saturday. I have mine, but I want to hear yours first.
And we talk about this with Memphis Madness, the lead up to College Game Day. As fun as College Game Day was, I thought Reese Davis's, introduction was amazing. Everybody was totally fired up from the beginning. The beers were flowing, the chants were going.
Oh yeah, the beers were
down
definitely
there.
flowing.
But no, still the 15 minutes or so, like before the show started, when everybody was kind of anticipating it, they were doing some of the live SportsCenter shots. All of that was that by far was my favorite part, and it was exactly sort of like what we got at Memphis Madness, where they're playing the music and everybody's doing the swag surfing, and it's like the anticipation of this big event that is more of a show than, like an actual sporting event.
So, before the game, this is my favorite moment before the game. We're sitting down on the field, and you just see Memphis fans piling in, and then I get a text from people like, it is impossible to get on the Liberty Bowl right now. And I walked around in the crowd. Like, I try to walk around and talk to people in the crowd before the game. I went and talked to some parents, went and talked to some other people. And it was packed, and you could tell, like, this is going to be a monumental moment for Memphis. It's going to be a great crowd. And then it really didn't hit me until I'm sitting in the press box, and I take a picture of the crowd and like, oh, it's a great crowd. It's filling in. It's going to be a sellout. It's going to be, it's going to be huge. And then, the first time that they cheered, it was like, oh man, this is special. Like, it's a special crowd. It's a special moment. Like, every time that something good happened, then you have like every time the refs did something, every time like it was, but the first time that they really hit that peak, I can't remember what happened because it was like, but I was like, oh, man, they're loud, and they're here, and Memphis showed out. And I think that was the first moment it kind of hit me because, game day is, like, it's an event. Memphis people show out for an event like that. But for them to come out in support of the game, I thought it definitely, like, even Mike Norvell got choked up about it after the game.
What struck me was just the whole vibes of the entire thing. And like the crowd is awesome. And I don't want to take away from that, but just, sometimes ahead of these monster games that really could alter the course of the season, there's a little bit of nervous energy in there, and it's not exactly, what you would expect. And then it gets loud when the game's going, but it's, the vibe isn't all the way there. And I at no point did I ever feel that with Memphis, just because game day was such a happy, like, cheery experience, and the broadcast looked awesome on TV, and it was just a giant infomercial for the city, and that was terrific. And I think by the time people got to the Liberty Bowl, they had been drinking for so long,
man,
they were feeling good anyway. But
free beer garden
when they got in the Liberty Bowl, and I was taking notice too, they got in there early. That was a big crowd before the game too. Usually, we're sitting there at the beginning of the game going, all right, there are some empty seats, but we'll expect it to fill in.
The bottom and the middle section usually fill in.
Right, in a little bit later. But nope, everybody was there before the game. It was an awesome image. And, if I've learned anything since I moved here a year and a half ago, it's when you give Memphis that national stage, that chance to be in a national spotlight, they take advantage of it. And I think that's exactly what they did on Saturday.
Another good moment, probably one I won't forget, was I walked down to Jerry Lee's. Jerry Lee Lewis's, the High 100, was having an event there where parents and people related to the coaching staff could come down, and High 100 members could come down and, spend the day. If you didn't want to deal with the crowd, you could watch from a distance. You could have some food. You could have some, stay warm and watch. Watching sunrise on Beale from Jerry Lee Lewis's, that like on that crowd of a packed slam Beale Street, I won't ever forget that. Like, it was.
You are not awesome. A morning person, so
no.
That's probably your first ever sunrise on Beale Street, right? Or no? Have you been down there late enough?
No comment.
No, I had a blast down there too. I was kind of in the crowd the whole time. I just wanted to be among the people.
Yeah, I kind of made my way down there after sunrise. I kind of walked around, and then I went and warmed up at Beale at Jerry Lee's, talked to some people, and then I made my way back down. And it took me an hour. Not kidding. It took me an hour and a half to get from Alfred's. There were so many people there. It took me an hour and a half to get from Alfred's to Rum Boogie. An hour and a half.
So basically, half of the show you're saying you spent trying.
Well,
I
just worked my way around. Well, talking to people.
I don't know about that, but I walked back to where I live, because I didn't have any phone service, and I had spent all morning taking pictures of the best signs, and that story's still up on dailymemphian.com, and is people wanted to see what the best signs were.
Oh, the best signs.
They were interested in that. But I walked all the way back to where I live, which isn't very far. And
I'm going to tell people where you live.
It probably took like 15 minutes for me to get there, get the photos out of the signs, and then walk back onto Beale Street. And by the time, when I left, I was by that circular stage. I would say it was like 30 or 40 feet away from the main stage.
Yeah.
And by the time I got back, I couldn't get anywhere even near that circular stage, because it had just filed.
Everybody
so
came
quickly.
in on BB King and Beale. It definitely seemed like, instead of coming in down near the other side of Beale or either side of Beale, people were filing in there over by Silky's and just pouring in by the stage. And that's kind of where a lot of congestion ended up being. But the best sign, you missed it. I don't know if you had it in your story because I was down there, but it was this one right here. 6-pack of Heineken, $8.47. Ticket to Memphis versus SMU, $9.01. Going into labor on Beale Street, $2,000 deductible. But Memphis on College Game Day, I cannot speak, priceless. Great sign. Then all of the signs asking for NCAA college football 19 come out. Also hit my heart, pulled on the heartstrings a little bit.
Yeah, but they weren't the funniest. The early champion, I can't think of all of them off the top of my head, but the early champion was the dude who was there with the "We Want Georgia State" sign,
that was great.
Obviously taking a shot at Tennessee. But game day was amazing, and everybody, all over the city has rehashed.
Let's
game
talk
day.
about the game.
The game itself.
I need to tell you I was wrong about something.
And I have feelings about people who have been hating on
Hating
Brady
on your
White
boy,
at
Brady White, yep.
quarterback, and so do you. So, first of all, just give me your overall thoughts on the win.
Great win. I think that I was wrong about something. I need to fess up. I said that the Louisiana Monroe quarterback, Caleb Evans, was going to be the best quarterback Memphis played all season. And I was wrong. I kind of shorted Shane Buechele there. And that kid came out and was awesome.
Prochet was, you could argue, their receiver was even better.
Oh,
than
yeah.
Buechele.
He gave TJ Carter the business. That kid was a monster. But even Buechele, I mean, he threw that off the flea flicker in the back in the corner of the end zone. That was an NFL throw.
I don't think he should have even thrown that ball. He was so covered.
He dropped it into the one place that the guy could catch it. I mean, he threw several passes that were like, whoa. But he ended up throwing 54 times. He threw so many times because Memphis shut down the run. I think outside of the one, I think it was a 68-yard run where the guy broke a tackle, and Norvell said there was a couple problems on that play that they had that ended up being that long run. They held them to like 18 yards. I mean, it was insane, the run defense, and that ended up forcing SMU to throw 50 times, and Buechele showed...
I don't know. Well, to be fair, I don't know if they were forcing them to throw it 50 times. Throwing it was just what was working for SMU, and there was no reason to go away from it. And they scored, 40-something points. So, I don't know if that's a big credit to their run defense as much as it is that they could not stop them from throwing the ball.
It definitely seemed like they came into the game like, okay, Memphis' secondary is a little spotty, which it has been, and Sanchez Blake being out.
Yeah, that's a big loss,
it's
man.
Such a big
and
loss.
You can see it.
But no, I mean, their corners just haven't been great this year. I mean, Jacoby Francis, Chris Clayburgh's still working his way back from injury. TJ Carter, I mean, the last 2 years have been pretty rough for TJ. I'm not going to lie. Like his career started on such a high note, but these last 2 seasons, it hasn't been what it was. We're still going to see if he can... At the end of last season, he kind of got it together, and we'll see if he can do that again this year. But Prochet, I mean, that guy was awesome.
That guy's going to play on Sundays.
Their other receiver whose name, for the life of me, I cannot remember it off the top of my head. He was awesome. And that's their third receiver. Reggie Roberson was hurt. I mean, he's not playing. So, I mean, who knows what would have happened if he played, but Brady White, man.
Yeah, I got to get my 2 cents out here about Brady White. He was, first of all, terrific. Everybody saw it. He made a ton of amazing throws in that game, none bigger than that 3rd and 8 on the 2-yard line down there in the fourth quarter when they really needed it. And he was just awesome. And so I jokingly tweeted after the game, I was like, all right, Brady White hater confessions right here. Come forward and you can be forgiven. You know, I'm not the person who can forgive you for being a Brady White hater. I don't really care. But
you care.
Here's how I feel, which is, if you want to be critical of Brady White when he plays bad, like he did not play good in that Temple game, and afterwards I came back here and I said that's pretty indefensible to turn the ball over that way, and you just can't do that. That's fine, and you can be critical of him if he plays a bad game, and you can say he played a bad game. He might play more bad games later on down in the year, and I'm sure there will be people who come out of the woodwork and go, see, I said it all along. I was right this whole time. Brady White is terrible. Well, here's the reality. Watching Brady White do what he's done the last 2 or 3 games, he's very clearly not terrible.
No.
He's actually a very good quarterback.
Yeah.
And so it would be absolutely and totally outrageous to say that he doesn't deserve, that he sucks, or that he shouldn't be the starting quarterback of Memphis, which is what people were saying online during his time of struggles there against Temple, and he missed a couple of throws the game prior to that. But Brady White clearly does not suck. He's the best option at starting quarterback.
They could have scored 70 points in that game.
Right.
And it wasn't going to be out of the realm of possibility. It's not out of the realm of possibility. They could have gotten to 75.
Right. So I guess my point is, I'm fine if you want to be critical of Brady if he plays a bad game. That's totally fair. But Brady White definitely does not suck.
No. And I really think the last 3 weeks, what's helped him a little bit is Antonio Gibson kind of, come on. That's helped a lot. Joey Magnifico is playing well. I mean, DeMonte Coxey's playing really well. Kenny Gainwell was a weapon against Tulane in the passing game. Something he said today that I thought was interesting was that it's not that he picks what weapons they're going to use is that the defense picks for him, and he's able to take advantage of that. And I think that's something that he's really done well the last 3 weeks, is that he's found the guys that are open. He's found the guys that are, he's been able to hit DeMonte Coxie in stride when he gets open. We saw that at the end of the Tulsa game on that 59-yard pass that set them up for the go-ahead score. I really think that he wouldn't admit it. He wouldn't say it. It's the best 3 weeks of his career. I mean, he's making throws that I've never seen him make. He's dialed in.
Exactly. For a guy who doesn't throw the ball downfield very well, has thrown the ball downfield pretty well these last
and I think
games.
they have made some subtle changes in their offense. They won't talk about it, obviously. But, I mean...
But we'll talk about it. They're not throwing those screen passes anymore. They're throwing it downfield. They're going north and south way more often than they were before. Yeah,
they didn't do that against SMU because SMU... And they've done it less in the past. I don't know how much. I'd have to go back and look how much they did it against Tulsa and Tulane. I can't remember off the top of my head. I don't want to be wrong. But they didn't do it against SMU. SMU's fantastic against guarding against green passes. And they did a huge game day segment on it. I had talked to a coach about it before last week. They play screen passes very well down there at SMU. They'll blow you up. They can turn those into turnovers. And I think Memphis did a good job of not doing that. I mean, they've used Antonio Gibson in some interesting ways already this season, but man,
that was amazing. I don't think I've seen a stat line like that. 97 rushing yards, 3 rushing yards away from
130.
100. Yeah.
And
130 receiving yards and
147, 50 something. Yeah.
Kickoff return yards and 3 touchdowns. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. And it's also just a great storyline because he was a special teams player last year, and I don't think a ton of people saw this coming. And that's been kind of the beauty of Memphis football is it seems like every week there's different guys that step up, absent of Kenny Gainwell, who shows up every game. But it feels like any of these guys could be a threat to have that monster breakout game. And now we'll take a quick break for a message from our sponsor.
The Daily Memphian Tigers podcast is brought to you by FedEx. Possibilities. What we deliver by delivering.
Well, something else we can talk about now, I guess, at this point, since Memphis did win, they did have that. I think that was probably one of Norvell's best coaching performances as I've seen. I mean, I think outside of the one 4th down conversion at the end of the game in the red zone, you can argue about that all day long, but whatever. I thought it was the right decision against a team like SMU, but his name is starting to pop up in the carousel a little bit.
Yeah.
It's popped up for Florida State. Arkansas fans are tweeting about him. We don't really know what's happening there, but it's been something that I've avoided talking about up to this point because you don't want to talk about it until jobs are open. We're not near the end of the season. We don't know what's going to happen, but his name's going to pop up, right? It's going to be out there. It's going to be out there. It's been this way
that's
since
just
he
the
got
reality of the job. And I think if you're worried about Mike Norvell leaving, you're kind of wasting your time.
You're wasting
because in all reality, I think there's going to be a day where Mike Norvell goes and moves on, and maybe he's patient and waits for the exact program that he wants. But if he wants to, it's hard to compete with that Power 5 money, and especially some of the tradition and opportunity and recruiting advantages you have at other programs. And that's not to say that Memphis can't be just as successful as those programs, but sometimes it's just a lot easier, right, when outside of the group of 5. And so if it happens, it happens. At this point, he's been so successful, you should be just thankful for what he's accomplished and how far they moved him.
Here's what I've heard. I've made calls about this because, when his name pops up, you make calls. It's going to take a lot to get him away from Memphis. It's going to have to be a situation where he can feel like, obviously he feels like he can win. I mean, it took a lot to get him to Memphis. Memphis was not the first people to call him. That wasn't the first job he'd ever interviewed for. It wasn't the first job he'd ever been a candidate for. The way he is he's not going to take a job to take a job. He's not going to jump to a job I can say this now. The Virginia Tech Fuente thing may not have been the best fit in retrospect. He is.
I think he still waited to get that job, and he thought that was the best fit.
Yeah, we could argue about that all day long, but I think that Norvell is not going to just take a job. He's not going to go somewhere where he's going to lose. He's not going to go somewhere where he can't recruit. He's not going to go somewhere where it's going to be a disaster. I think he wants a big job. a big job. But we'll see what opens, and we'll react once things start opening up. But for now,
but to say that he's not just gonna take any job does not insinuate that he's just never going to leave.
No, it's not that. It's that
Right.
I don't think he is going to take a job where he feels like the ceiling is the same as Memphis's,
Right.
where he can't. I don't think he's going to leave and not go compete for a national championship.
For example, if you go to Arkansas, you are now in a SEC West that is absolutely brutal and very hard to deal with, and makes winning very challenging.
Very, very challenging.
Like those are the types of things that you have to definitely consider.
Right now, I could sit here and probably argue with you that is Arkansas a better job than Memphis, ceiling wise.
There are a lot of now. While you're in the SEC, there's a lot of drawbacks at Arkansas, and there's not a great history, a great recent history at that school.
Your best
either.
season at Arkansas is going to be what, 9 to 10 wins in a Cotton Bowl. What's your ceiling at Memphis?
Yeah, exactly.
But it all, we'll react when it happens, or react when more things pop up, when more word starts coming out. But as for right now, I think that Norvell, if he were sitting here right now, would say he's focused on the season, which he is. He is very focused on the season. Fans should focus on the season. I've gotten messages, we're blah, 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 blah. Focus on the season, and we'll go from there. And I think that's the best. Now let's talk about basketball.
We should move on to basketball. I have 2 stories up right now over at dailymemphian.com that you should check out. One is from the game last night, and basically kind of recaps what Penny said in the pregame press conference on Monday. He basically made all these promises of what the team is going to look like and all these predictions when James Wiseman finally gets on the floor. And when James got out there on Tuesday, scores 28 points, grabs 11 rebounds, has 5 dunks, goes absolutely off. No one could stop him. He's dunking everything. Oh, and by the way, he did it all in 22 minutes, which is just insane. And looked every bit of what Penny Hardaway promised the day before. So that's the first story. Then I went home last night, and as soon as I got home, I turned the TV on, and the Kentucky-Michigan State game from the Champions Classic is wrapping up, and they cut to SportsCenter, and they show the highlights of the game that just ended, and boom, all of a sudden, Penny Hardaway and James Wiseman are on TV, and Scott Van Pelt is talking about them. They are the number one storyline after the Champions Classic, ahead of LeBron James and the Lakers, which I thought was pretty impressive, and I wrote another story about that and how Memphis is now being thrust into this national stage and sort of the complications that go with that. But James Wiseman, absolutely as advertised.
Yeah, I watched.
Looked great.
I watched the game. I watched a lot of the game. It felt very much like an East High School game, like where it was like, these guys aren't as big as James. These guys aren't as fast as James, and James is going to make them pay for it. Like, it is awesome to see him on the national stage. I just cannot wait, and I think a lot of Memphis fans feel like this too. Is I can't wait for this team to play somebody.
Oh, I'm fired up about Oregon already.
Like, that Oregon game is going to be massive because it's going to be their first game against real competition. It's going to be their first game where we see these guards, these freshmen, up against other freshmen, other teams. Like, I like starting to see. I like what Duke and Kansas and Kentucky and Michigan State did last night, where you start your season off against one of these other top teams, so you can see.
I don't know if the coaches would agree with that.
Oh yeah, I don't know if they, but you can see, you can gauge where your team is at, kind of in it with that, and where you can go from there. I think it's tough against some of these lesser opponents, but Memphis is still getting it in. 3 games in. Oregon's a tough team. I think that's gonna be a massive game. I mean, we'll see what the guards are made of. We'll see. I think that you may disagree with me here. A starting lineup tinker should be in the works. I don't know if it will be.
I think as of the day before the game, DJ Jeffries was maybe going to be a starter, and then they got to the game on Tuesday, and Lester Quinones was a starter, and Penny said after the game, look, DJ is a starter for us, but we just felt like he was better off coming off the bench because he is so dynamic and he's such an offensive boost when you put him in there, that he's a the perfect guy to bring off the bench, in my opinion. Because especially when Lester isn't shooting the ball terrific, because Lester's still a big guard and should be able to defend pretty well. And then you bring in DJ and he's kind of that boost of offense. I think you could really switch either of them out if Lester's shooting the ball well, and either one of them can be a boost on the offensive end. But for now, it was DJ coming in for Lester Quinones, and he looked terrific too last night. 5 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, and 4 blocks, I believe, which is very impressive. Led the team in plus minus at plus 32.
Yep. But
he looked great.
Alex Lomax seemed to have a really good game. I think him and Tyler Harris kind of had opposite games. It definitely looks out. Tyler Harris, 1 of 7. Alo was able to put up 8 points. I mean, it definitely seems like those veterans kind of had experienced opposite ends of the spectrum in that game. What do you think about how Tyler's feeling his way through this, feeling his way into a role? It definitely looks like.
I think Tyler's always going to have a role, because Tyler, when he gets hot, is unlike any player Memphis has. Like, when Tyler is hot, and we saw it at times last year, you just give him the ball and get out of the way, and you don't even really criticize any of his shot selection or anything, because you just have such confidence that it's going in. And he's always going to be that guy, so I think he's always going to have a role and is going to play throughout the season. You're right. Alex Lomax looked great last night. He's just very comfortable with James, and you could see that. And he was so happy after the game. He said, I felt like so long, like it's been so long since I could get the easiest assist in the world.
That was a good line.
By throwing it up to James. And he said every gym is going to feel like the East High School gym for the rest of the year, because it's just the two of them running pick and roll, and whatever they want to do, just throw the ball up and let James come down with it and make a play. I actually asked Alex about that. I said, how much of your duty as a guard or a point guard running the offense, how much do you just hear from Penny? Throw it down to James. Just throw it in his direction and just let him do his thing. And it's more of a science than that.
Yeah,
which was kind of what I expected his answer to be. I thought he did a great job of explaining it. He talks about, you want to drive into the lane just enough to bring the defender up to give him a little bit more space, or sometimes if you're going to dump it down to James and they think you're going to dump it down to James, you've got space to shoot it at the top. He changes the entire offense, and like Penny said, the second he stepped on the floor, most of my concerns that I had and the concerns that he had after those 2 exhibition games were totally erased. And I do want to see James go up against somebody closer to his size. He had a good 4 or 5 inch advantage over the next closest dude. And I went back and watched all of his highlights, and most of his buckets are just totally uncontested, just him dunking in the wide open.
I mean, that one dunk, I don't remember who hit the pass, but it
was Damian Ball on the fast break.
Yes, on the fast break.
Damian Ball, and that pass on TV, it does not look as good as difficult and challenging as that pass actually was, because from where we were seated courtside, you could see like the defense start to come together, and Damian threw that ball on the move. He's flying down the floor, threw 3 guys, and it hit James right in the chest for a wide open dunk. That's essentially all that his offense was last night. I do want to see him go up against a guy and show us some post moves and some other things, but the throw it up to James offense seems to work pretty well.
Yeah, it does. It's always worked. Here's something that I find interesting is that near the end of the season, you want to know who your best 8-9 guys are. Your best 8-9 guys, when you start shrinking down the rotation against good teams, you're going to want to know who your best 7-8 guys are. Does Penny know yet?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think he does either. And it's a lot to ask for a guy with, for a coach with a freshman-laden team, you're not going to know super early, but I think obviously we know at least 3 of the best 8 are Precious, DJ, Precious, DJ, James, Boogie, but I don't think the right combinations are just there yet. Do you expect more lineup tinkering going into the next game?
Kind of. I think I don't know about going into the next game. Maybe once you get to Oregon, it changes a little bit. Penny said he kind of sees this rotation of getting down to 8 or 9 eventually. Pretty much everybody played by the end of the first half in the last game. So that's not what the normal rotation is going to look like when you get to conference play. And I don't know if he has a sense of who his 8 or 9 guys are. That clearly means a couple of the guys that played decent minutes last night are not going to be a significant part of the rotation going forward. I think you want a little bit more from Lance Thomas right now. He's been good on the defensive end. You hope you could get a little bit more from him on the offensive end.
4 rebounds, 2 blocks, but had 2 turnovers and 3 fouls.
Right, and then you have Jaden Hardaway mixed it up last night. He's a great shooter, so if you can get him opportunities to shoot open shots, then he's an asset on the floor. But you've got other shooters too, so you just gotta. And I'm not saying that those are going to be the 2 guys that aren't part of the rotation. I just think that this is the kind of stuff you're going to have to figure out.
Yeah.
You're going to have to watch to see, okay, what do they do in the next game? And what do they do in the big game against Oregon?
Yep.
And then the further you get along, by the time you get to February, you're going to have a lot more answers when it comes to that.
And Isaiah Stokes' waiver situation, we don't have much clarity on that.
They're still waiting, and that's extremely frustrating.
But the last time they had to wait, the end result was with Lance Thomas, and he wasn't eligible.
I'll say this, though. It seems like there's a lot more waivers that have gotten cleared this year, and Isaiah's coming home, so that's a situation where a lot of waivers have gotten cleared.
Yeah.
So you never know. Maybe that does happen.
But if it does happen, that throws another wrench right into the rotation situation, doesn't it?
Kind of. I mean, the majority of your minutes at forward are already taken.
They're taken, yeah.
Because Precious is going to play a lot. Precious didn't play a ton of minutes last night.
He only played 17 minutes.
He's going to play more than that, though. James is obviously going to play, if possible, the most minutes on the team. And then DJ is going to play a lot of minutes, too. And then you mix in Lance, who's got a better stroke than Isaiah Stokes does and has a little bit more size. And just if you need a bruiser, I guess Isaiah gets in the mix. We're gonna have to wait and see. I don't see if he gets cleared, though. I don't see it causing major reconstruction to the rotation.
I got you. Well, I think that'll do it for today.
Yes, you can follow me on Twitter at DrewHill_DM. You can follow Jonah on Twitter at _Jonah Jordan. You can get this podcast or any other Daily Memphian podcasts on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, or Google Play. Thanks for listening.
We deliver tickets, team merchandise, and everything you need for the game. But what you really get is so much more.
FedEx Delivery.
Game Day spirit. What we deliver by delivering.
In-depth journalism in the Memphis community, the Daily Memphian is of Memphis, not just in Memphis, and seeks to tell the stories of this city. TheDailyMemphian.com. Truth in place.